Hey, welcome to this week's devotions. I'm excited because this week we are going to unpack what we talked about in the sermon, which is the experience the disciples had when they went with Jesus to what's called the Mount of Transfiguration. The Mount of Transfiguration was probably the greatest, the most amazing experience the disciples had pre the resurrection. They saw Jesus in a glorified state that was a bit more than the amazing thing that would have been about being with him every day anyhow. On the Transfiguration, Mount of Transfiguration, Jesus' face literally lights up. His bodies are like a flash of lightning, it says in verses 28 through 35. Incredible experience. So what I want us to talk about this whole week is your albedo. Your albedo, not libido. That's a conversation for another time. Albedo is the way we reflect, or the way something reflects. It's the scientific word for the way one thing reflects another. So in other words, Venus has an albedo of 0.65. That means 65% of the light that hits Venus reflects off of it. And that might change a little bit depending on its orbit. But the way we reflect is the way we show God's glory, God's presence, the way we indeed reflect who He is. Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration reflected His Father's glory, and the disciples saw it, the brilliance of it. It says in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18, this is a little passage I want to encourage you to look up. It's one that I want to memorize word for word, but the gist of 2 Corinthians 3:18 is that we with unveiled faces, it's comparing us to Moses, who put a veil over his face because when he saw the glory of the Lord on the Mount Sinai getting the Ten Commandments and came down, he literally was so bright, it was glaring, right? So he put a veil. But it says that that veil's been taken away from us in the new covenant, in our relationship with Christ, and we see His glory. And the idea in 2 Corinthians 3:18 is that we with unveiled faces reflect the Lord's glory and are transformed into His image. And the word transformed there is the same word, metamorpho, that is used in Luke chapter 9 when it talks about Jesus' face being transformed. It's our albedo, our ability to reflect God well. There are 5 areas that I see that we can reflect God better when we experience a deeper embrace of who Jesus is. The disciples experienced a deeper embrace of God. It's what we want to experience. And for us to experience that, that means that we've got to go past just knowledge into an experience of Him. And so the 5 things we'll talk about this week that affects our albedo, our ability to reflect God well, is number 1, our ability to embrace His pattern of connection. Jesus' pattern of connection. We'll see that in the first couple verses. Our ability to embrace His power to change us. That's the transfiguration, that word metamorphosis or metamorpho, where we get our word metamorphosis. We're going to look at that. Our ability to embrace the purpose of His coming. Why did Jesus come? We'll look at Elijah and Moses that had a conversation with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. We'll dig into that a little bit. We'll embrace the pronouncement of His being chosen, or His pronouncement of His identity, the message the Father gives on that Mount of Transfiguration, which is very similar to the message given earlier at His baptism, a pronouncement of who He is. And lastly, we'll look at the preparation for our commissioning, or His commissioning of the disciples, or commissioning of us. We'll look at those 5 things this week, and we will talk about our albedo, our ability to reflect God well. There's a little poem that says, you don't have to say how you live each day. You don't have to say if you work or play. A tried true barometer serves in its place. However you live, it will show in your face. If falsehood and deceit you bear in your heart, it will not stay inside where it first got its start. For sinew and blood are a thin veil of lace. What you wear in your heart, you'll wear in your face. If your life is unselfish, if for others you live not for what you get, but for how much you give, If you live close to His grace, it will show in your face. I love that. When we live close to God's grace and experience the glory of who He is, our albedo changes. This week, join me from day to day as we dig into this passage and talk about how well we're doing at reflecting the love, the grace, and the power, and the transformation of the God who has come inside of us, not to leave us as we were, but to make us more in His image. God bless. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.